Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Got a great show for you today. Before we get into it, a little sobering lesson. A few pilots and I were down in the Ruby Mountains last week, about a week and a half ago, in Nevada, trying to do a very cool bivvy, and we're mostly successful. This was Hans Eversmanik, a 5-times X-Out pilot, and another local friend of mine, Willie Cannell, who's doing the X-Pier, and then Ben and I, and a couple other friends of ours that were helping us drive, and Ben and I were getting ready for the X-Pier. I was going to be supporting him this time around. He's supported me in the last 2 X-Alps, and as a lot of you probably know already, my other sporter, Bruce, had a very untimely accident, I should put it that way, about a month ago. He's no longer with us. It wasn't a paragliding accident, but anyway, that's not part of this show. But anyway, Team USA 1 is kind of in tatters right now because Ben had an accident when we were on that bivvy trip and broke his back. No cord damage. He's going to be fine, but he and I discussed it just this morning and thought it'd probably be a good thing to share with you all, because I get a lot of emails. Almost every day I get emails from listeners of the show that say that, something they learned or heard about saved their life. And that's what this is all about, is just spreading good knowledge. So don't want to start this one off on a dark, bad note, but in a lot of ways it was really good. I think he got super lucky, dodged a bullet, and is going to be 100% fine. He's going to have a rough year, but I just wanted to talk about what happened in that accident, because accidents are never one thing, and it's always, afterwards with 20/20 hindsight, we can pick out a whole bunch of things that I think will help all of you maybe avoid similar fates in your own flying career. So the first thing was Ben broke the rule, and we both, acknowledged it going into it. He was flying a new harness and a new wing for, in prep for the X-Pier. And part of that was just, it was conscious. We knew that was risky. You should always just fly one bit of new gear first, and then always fly it at your home site in pretty predictable conditions and kind of get used to it. We were far from that. We were in Nevada in the spring, and it was totally on. And so that was mistake number 1 for sure. But he had been flying quite a bit this winter and was, feeling pretty tuned up, and just felt like he really needed to jump on this gear and get used to it before the race, which is, a month away. So anyway, that was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2, the day before the accident, he'd had a really good first day, and then the second day, we all launched. I think there was 5 of us in the air, and it was quite strong northwest, and Ben made a move that can only be described as pretty young. It just was, he was trying to keep up. He was, thinking about flying with the gang. I probably recognized, how much pressure that puts somebody in, and anyway, got himself in a pretty hairy lee side situation with a lot of wind, and in retrospect, should have just dodged off the back while he had the height and gone out in the flats, and he probably would have beat us all. But top landed, that all went fine. Landed in some snow. He was landing backwards and did not get his wing down very fast, or I would say really correctly. He tugged really hard on both C's, which is a common way to do it. But go back to the episode with Bill Belcourt where he answers a bunch of questions, and I talk about there, when you're landing in a lot of wind, I think there's a much better way to do it. Won't get into that right now, but anyway, kind of turned his wing into a parachute, and he got dragged into some rocks, and he was fine, but did quite a bit of damage to the harness and a little bit of damage to the wing, and then walked down 4,000 feet off the top of this mountain. And then that night, when we all got back together, put all the gear back together, and it was no problem, and it was fine, and Speedy Stitcher and a bunch of line replacements and stuff and repairs, and he was good to go. Again, in 20/20 hindsight, what I failed to do is really check in with why he'd made that move, and we talked about it briefly, but we didn't really properly have a debrief, and we kind of laughed about it, and he said, I was just flying, I was doing what you do, man, I was flying deep, and that wasn't deep, that was just kind of bad decision making, and it would have been good for me to really check in with him and be like, hey man, why did you do that? And it wasn't safe. It was putting yourself in a lot of unnecessary risk, and there was just really no reason to be there. So fast forward to the next day, and on the way up to launch, we were in a totally different zone now, another place that none of us had flown at the south end of the Diamonds. And clearly it was going to be a very good day. Proven a little bit later by Cody and Willie went a long ways, flew all the way to the diamonds and crossed to the rubies and did really well because they didn't know the accident had happened. And I failed to really check in with Ben. I'm kind of his mentor and probably should have seen more of the signs, and kind of had this internal discussion going on in my mind like, God, I should find out why he did that yesterday. I should find out where his headspace is today. Maybe this would be a good day to just drink a beer and chase in the truck. But I didn't want to put any negative thoughts in his head. And I know he's getting really excited about the race, and he really wanted to train, and got a really good day. I think, he would have said, yeah, man, I'm fine. I want to go. But I maybe would have recognized that he was probably a little bit nervous than he was either used to, or I guess what I'm saying is, never underestimate the amount of pressure that you can put yourself in when you're either with really good pilots or in a totally new place or with totally new gear. So you can see these things are starting to add up. Anyway, just by complete dumb luck, I launched first and bombed out. And then Cody and Willie launched, and they struggled to get out, but eventually did. Then Hansa launched, and he also bombed out, and then kind of slope landed and relaunched. Didn't work again, kind of slope landed again. Couldn't really see him. We were just in this very kind of shallow draw canyon, and it was middle of the day. It was definitely on, but it wasn't crazy. And then I saw Ben blow a couple launches and then get off the hill, and kind of missed a thermal and grabbed something, but anyway, wasn't able to dig out, and for whatever reason went over by where Hansa was, decided not to top land there. Flew kind of out this draw. Later found out he was just, trying to get up, just, milking it and trying to get a low save. And I'm going to only guess here, but I think two things contributed to what happened. One was, it was kind of swirly, and even though he was flying down out of this canyon, and the air was going up the canyon, as you would expect, it was kind of swirly, and I imagine just as he was getting kind of close to the ground, he was probably on the backside of a thermal and was watching his ground speed and saw that he was speeding up. And then inevitably, I'm sure what happened is the day before, with him damaging his brand new gear to go to the race, he was probably thinking, I'm going to stick this landing and I'm not going to go into the other. It was just sage everywhere except these two little tiny fields where cows had mowed it down, and there was a kind of a water tank and a fence, so there were some obstructions. That was probably on his mind, and I had just landed in one of those, which he'd seen, and so, he got a big burp of air before he got to those and was going to overfly them, and anyway, very low to the ground, like 30 feet off the deck, made a really dramatic, 180-degree turn to land up the hill. And, because he's on this new wing, didn't know the stall point, hadn't done any SAV on it, spun his glider. By the time he spun it, he was, 20 feet off the deck. There was nothing he could do, and it kind of pendulum him into the hill and hit pretty hard. I was sprinting before he even hit the ground, knowing that this was not going to be a good situation. So the major lesson there, other than all the ones I've already mentioned, is, when you're on final, even if it's downwind, don't change anything. If you're really low to the ground, that's not a time to make a real rapid, a real quick decision like, oh my God, this isn't going to work out. If Ben had just kept flying straight, it was, like I said, a really shallow draw. He had a mile in front of him, and he would have landed in the sage. Very unlikely done any damage to his glider, but certainly wouldn't have done any damage to him either. It just would have taken us some time to get it out of there. And I'm sure he was just thinking, I got to land, pack up my stuff, and get back up with Gavin and go flying. So a series of, preventable mistakes there for sure. So just wanted to pass that along. I think these are all little things, but of course they can add up and do a lot of damage. As I said, he kind of destroyed T8, T9, mostly T9, and totally stable. He'll have 100% recovery. The surgery went great, thank goodness. Like I said, I think we dodged a bullet. I think the pressure of the X-Pure was, he was pretty new pilot to be taking something like that on. Just really wanted to have something to train for and shoot for, and we'd had so much fun in the X-Alps that, it was pretty easy to sink your teeth into something like that. But just another one of these things, take it slow, take your time, make sure you've got all the kind of ground steps and all the base stuff that you need, all the foundation that you need. Finally, this is more critique of me, and I was first on scene. And then we had Hansa and a good buddy of mine, Charlie, that were there, minutes afterwards. Luckily, we all had in reaches, which I can't, we can't even do projects like this with spots. So yet another push to make sure you're flying with in reaches, so you've got that two-way texting. But we also had cell. We weren't too far from Eureka, so we got 911 on right away. We also had the in reaches to talk to the other people that were around us, the other EMS folks and the sheriff, and because cell was pretty patchy. So all in all, it took them about 2 hours to get a helicopter in there and get them airlifted out to Salt Lake, which is excruciatingly long time when your buddy's on the ground and in a lot of pain. He also had a dislocated left shoulder, which was quite a bit of pain. So, the first thing we did was we tried to just get him way more comfortable, cut all his clothes off, cut his harness off, get him covered in the shade. Make sure his spine was stable before we moved him at all. We knew it was broken, so we were very careful about moving him into a more comfortable position. But then a major screw up was that none of us had real drugs. I had grabbed the wrong first aid kit, had my first aid kit, but I'd forgot to transfer the pills over from my backcountry kit to my Bivvy kit, so all I had was like heavy dose Advil, which was just brutal. Knowing he didn't have any head injuries, and with my wilderness response training, he definitely could have. I could have given him much better drugs to make him a lot more comfortable for those 2 hours. When the helicopter arrived, that was the first thing he did. But one thing I wasn't aware of is that EMS services came in by truck from Eureka relatively quickly. They were there in an hour. And in Nevada, they're not allowed to carry any drugs. So go back and listen to that podcast with Matt Wilkes and stock up your first aid kit. The other thing is just communications. We found out after this whole thing was done that Willie had a pretty proper first aid kit in his truck, which was sitting right with us, and we didn't know that. So there were really good drugs in there. So a little bit of failure of communication on our part, and then everybody, Hansa, myself, Charlie, we all should be carrying, decent painkillers to help people out on that. So I'm not a doctor. Like I said, go back and listen to that Matt Wilkes podcast. There are scenarios where you don't want to give narcotics to somebody, but if it's not a head injury, it really helps. The other thing I didn't do, mostly because he was, stable and talking and, not freaking out the whole time. He was putting up with a lot of pain, but I also never checked his vitals. And, I could see that his heart rate was fine and he was coherent and he was blinking and, I didn't have anything to be worried about there. But that was one of the first things that the guy, when we got out of the heli, the paramedic asked for. The EMS folks didn't, but he asked for that. Just, it's nice to have a record of stuff. Every 15 minutes or so, I should have been taking his pulse. I was pretty busy dealing with, emergency services and all that stuff at the time and just trying to make sure Ben was comfortable. But anyway, just another push for you to get your wilderness first response training. The unfortunate reality of this sport is at some point you're probably going to be dealing with this kind of stuff. And so the better prepared you are, the better. Anyway, let's get on with this show. Sorry for that long preamble. I hope that just makes you think and helps some folks out and maybe saves some other people from having a similar terrible situation. This show with Fabien Blanco, I've been dying to talk to Fabien. He and I met several years ago in Annecy. He runs a school there called Flyeo. Does a lot of training on single surface wings, tons of SIV, like tons and tons and tons. Famous for it there. He really got into flying because of the mountaineering, so he's super into the lightweight thing and Bivvy, and so we discuss all of that. And really from his perspective, from the instructor perspective, we talk about good students, bad students, and everything in between. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this. It took us weeks and weeks to put this together with a bunch of bad connections and stuff, so I apologize. There will be some places where the sound isn't great, but it's worth sticking in there and listening to it. I think you'll get a lot out of this. So please enjoy this conversation with Fabien Blanco at Flyeo. Tell me, where did you sleep last Fabien, this is a real honor to have you on the show. We met a few years ago. You were so kind to host me at Flyeo there in Annecy and showed some fun films, and haven't seen you since, but you've been highly, highly, highly requested to get on here. And I just recently saw your Patreon page where your team is releasing these incredible educational videos. So I think it's a really timely opportunity to talk to you about SIV and Bivvy and instruction and just all the things that your team is doing there in Annecy. So welcome to the mayhem, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for you, Gavin. Of course, we can talk about the new evolution of Flyeo because I've got partners now, new partners, very motivated, and we have a lot of different news to do.
Yeah, great. So let's just start there. Give the audience, that aren't familiar, just a real brief history of Flyeo, and maybe a little bit of your own history, because I know you're there in Dussard. You're in one of the most famous places to fly in the world. You're perfectly set up for SIV and for XC, and you're doing some single surface instruction now. Maybe just a real brief history, and then I'll ask you some specific questions about. Maybe we'll dig into SIV to begin with.
All right, that would take quite a lot of time, but briefly, I started Flyeo now 12 years ago, just with a friend, which is my business partner, because just like business angel at the beginning. And we just developed more the private coaching, because I'm ski instructors and also climbing instructors. And for coaching, private coaching was good, I think, to find the progression for each people. That's why we ran that for a few years. We decided just to grow, just to have a shop, because I used to work for Macper Technology. We tried to find a good relationship with them, and we just have a little shop, and this shop grow, and now we have a team. And then we run to do a lot of SIV coursing also, because I used to be acro pilot. I can see a lack of people of different kind of topics, like if they have fears, they have different wrong information from different kind of people. And I was interesting just to coach individually people, and the way of SIV courses, it's the best way to do that. That's why we promote last maybe 6-7 years more SIV courses, because for me that was the way of teach individual people much more precisely.
Yeah. So Fabien, tell me more about, kind of how SIV has changed over the years, and take me through kind of one of your typical courses. If someone hasn't done any SIV, how does it all work at Flyeo?
Yeah, there was a huge evolution since the beginning, and now actually we try in Flyeo to develop a philosophy. Means our philosophy is based on fundamental things and not based on to do some maneuvers. I explain myself. We develop basic fundamentals on technique. Means just to trust on your harness, just to understand for the people the brake range and to use the full brake range. We understand also to push them just to have main visual vision of what is going on, and not to have a narrow vision. Also, just to all that kind of basic stuff, we work on the mantle also. That's why we work on the technique and on the mantle. We work more on the people, on the pilot, and less on the glider.
Tell me more about how do you work on the mental side of things?
Because a lot of people actually think they don't do something because the glider is quite scary. A lot of fear on their mind. We try first just to push themselves on a stable position on the harness, and then when they trust on the equipment, we can work with them. It's just a little step on the mantle. We can work on the mantle, and then we have different other progressing step for the mantle, just to realize to push themselves out of the comfort zone, but just little by little, because a long time ago, by the past, SIV instructors, like I done 10 years ago, was to push people too much on maneuvers, but maneuvers was too difficult for them. They not really realize, or they not they cannot reproduce by themselves after the course. And that's why we change our mind, and we work more with just slow progression, but to let them more understood about the basic or the tiny just the tiny details has more important than the huge maneuvers to do it.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Our last guest that was just on the show, that we just released this a few days ago, but Adele Honte was talking about, that your mind in the beginning can't catch up to what is happening with your wing. If you have a cascading event and you throw your reserve and you're down on the ground and you have perfect memory, perfect recall of what happened and how it happened and where you went wrong, then you're in control. But where most people don't have any idea, it shot out in front of me, and then I don't know, it all just happened too fast, and you're not. In other words, they aren't trained to have understood. They haven't done it enough to have really understood. So I like the idea of really slowing that down and taking your time. That must be quite fruitful with your students.
Yeah, and in two side we have the commercial way. It's tremendous how the new gliders are safe, how the new gliders are fast, are a lot of performance. But the commercial way forgot to say you must have the basic skills, technical and mental, just an analysis of situation to go through that and to just take advantage of those performance. And that's the main problem, because they trust more on the glider than they trust on them. And when the trouble is coming, they have no idea what's happened, because everything goes fast. And when you're on the trouble, the cascade goes. And the problem after the cascade, it's they cannot really recover very safely because they don't know what's happened. That's why they come through us, and we just explain them just little by little, and we are just more like I don't know, a surgeon for them. I don't know.
So you break it all. You really break it down into its various kind of parts and what's happening at each stage.
Yeah, that's true. That's why our evolution is we really, whatever the levels, we had some different little tests for them. For this little test, we can exactly know if they have a lack of different fundamentals, like we described it. And if they have a lack, we have to push more on to work on that kind of fundamental. Then we can go further. But for all the level for the French team, we train for the team, for the British Race Academy, even for different level, we have a few tests, and with these tests we can discuss with the pilot and interest them to work on that kind of tiny points before to go in hard, difficult maneuvers.
I like that as well, because then you're getting some immediate kind of self-evaluation feedback. You immediately kind of know where you are. Am I reacting too fast, not fast enough? Am I reacting in the proper way? It really gives you kind of a baseline to know where to build from.
That's true. And sometimes people think, oh yeah, but it's natural for me. Okay, it could be natural, but there is some fundamental things, and if you have a lack in one situation, you will be in trouble. And if you have this lack, you will not cover because you don't know what's going on. That's why we try for everyone to have a simple analysis about the fundamentals. And if it goes right, we can go further. But if it goes wrong, if we go faster, naturally, we can, in one step of a progression, we're going to have a trouble, and then we have just to return back on into the basis fundamentals.
So tell me about the self-evaluation test. What for example would that look like?
Yeah, I define. It's really simple, because in a maneuvers like simple just pitching or a simple 360 with a rapid exit, I can see 90% of the skills of the pilot.
Wow.
Why? It's just because you have everything in that kind of thing. You just in how to introduce the rotation. If people can pull the brake only, or can use the weight shift and plus the brake, or can make a roll or different thing like this, or can do nothing. You can estimate the engagement of the rotation if it goes slow, because for them, for all pilots who don't know really well, for them it's hard to estimate if they go fast in rotation, if they go slow, because it's just their own estimation. With this test, we can see that they're just doing by themselves, and we can see how they engage, and they can see how they come out of the rotation as quick as possible. I ask them to go as quick as possible and to manage. But with them, they don't want to push themselves too much. I can see the skill, what kind of technique they use to coming out, and the mental aspects about that, and some different tiny brake range, the brake range, I can see how they use it, and all stuff like this. For sure, we're not pushing them on a hard dive power. We just have them just to do just one turn, enough, and then coming out as quick as possible. Just with the only test, all the pilots, even the high level standard, I can really see the different failures.
Wow, that's amazing. So if you judging on that, when you go really more the kind of mental, and rather than focusing on maneuvers, but really the fundamentals, where is a student coming out ideally after their first SIV with you? Where do you kind of hope to get them, or is it just too individual? Everybody's different.
Yeah, for sure, everybody's different, but sometimes they arrive with the big goal. They arrive like, I want to have a new glider. I want to test my glider. I want to test my new harness, my pod harness. When I explain our philosophy, they can be not agree the first part. They're very interesting, but we have to negotiate. But for sure, the trust on the instructor, the trust on my team and on me, and they say, okay, well, let's do it like this. Then how do we explain that? It's say, okay, you just show me that, and we explain why 360 rapid exit. Or for sure, we'll not tell them, oh, it's because for analyzing yourself or something like this. We just tell them, okay, let's do it because rotation, if a glider just have a trouble in a thermal, or if you miss a thermal, if you're out of a thermal, if you have a collapse and the collapse reopen, for sure, the glider will introduce to a rotation, a quick. But you don't want this rotation. That's why you want to stop it. And if you stop it, you have the back pitch, and you have to control the pitch and all stuff like this. That's why it's a basic situation you can have million times in your flight. But that's why our introduction is made like this. That's why we're going to work on that, because it's really for us a basic situation. And even in this basic situation, if you get the right skills, if the mental is quite good enough, we can go further, because if you have a misunderstanding on another maneuver, for sure the glider will make a turn, and this turn includes a rotation, and you must be able, without to do no fear, with just a reflex action, you have to coming out and restart again, without you have to use the mental potential decrease so much. After that, they are a little bit more agree just to take part of this philosophy. And then the action comes, and after the first action, we have to negotiate very quickly, or not, or we have to work on basic action. And that's why they go with us, because they understand they have a lack, and this lack could be a trouble for the rest of the progression.
Do you run into, or obviously you do, how much do you run into just students that are difficult to, I'm trying to frame this in the right way. People learn in different ways. Some people are kinetic learners. Some people can learn from books. Some people can only learn by seeing it. What happens when you get a student who really struggles, who really maybe they aren't listening, or they're not digesting the information, or maybe they think they're much better than they are?
Yeah, well, we really adapt about the different way of teaching. For sure, this test, like a 360 rapid exit, is really oriented to people with the B plus glider or B plus glider to C glider. People with the A gliders, most of the time, they know they never really rarely overestimating their level.
Hmm.
They just want to learn some basic stuff just to go forward. But most of the time, for sure, people, all the knowledge, all the experience they have, it's all the time positive. That means even if it's not on my way of steering, I haven't got a way of steering. I have psychologically, a philosophy, but not a really, because if it's efficient, I don't care if he's doing with my technique or with another. The important is to have an efficient action, and it should be clear with the mantle, with this mantle. Both things, if they go right, I don't care. I just push to have efficient action. And to have efficient action, you must be precise. To be precise, you must know what are the fundamentals to get the right actions. That's why, whatever the level, if you are a beginner, if you're not well sit into your harness because you never moved before, I told them just feel the little imbalance, to get the best position, just to feel in balance out of a turn, to feel in balance in centrifuge force. And that's it. That will be a huge progress for them, because they will feel no fear, and they can start working precisely with the hands. But for the other pilots, I try to convince them to change the position first, to have a better control with the hands.
When is someone ready for their first SIV? When do you recommend somebody does their first SIV, and then how often should it be repeated?
Um, to be honest, we had I don't know. It's a year packing progression for our student. I mean, during the year we have beginners, and we push them. They follow our course during the year, and for them we have the first SIV over the water with the ambience and security area very very soon. I mean, after the 20th flight, we go over the water, just to experiment a bit of movement before to be in the thermal. But it's easy for us just to push them because we are in the area, and for our beginners, it's a simple way just to put them in this situation. But for other people, we ask them just to have a minimum, to be autonomous on the takeoff and the launch. In autonomous means don't spend energy to launch, don't spend energy to reach the landing safely. And we'll look after them in the air. Why? Because if they spend a lot of energy on takeoff, for sure they will be not clear in their mind in the air. And for sure, for the landing, we are not here. We are not here just to help them at the landing, because that's why the minimum skills we need, it's a pilot which is completely clear on the launch and on the landing. And then we can adapt completely, really adapt each flight, each days, the program completely. That's why it's important just to be as soon as possible, because during past years, SIV courses was just for two different topics. First, people were scared and they had injured, and they want to go further and they want to understand more the glider. The second, our pilot want to discover the new glider or the new equipment before the race season. That those two topics, they are not the right way of learning. It's more question of a progression, and we want to to push more the development of the pilot instead of the glider. And it works. And it works because I don't care if you have a red or blue glider. I don't care if you have A, B, C, or CCC glider. It's just if you can adapt all the skills, all the technique and everything, the mantle will be increasing. You're going to have a gain. But if because you fly for 5 years, and you have because after 5 years you have to pass through a sea because everybody do this, you're on the wrong way. You're on the wrong way.
Is SIV for everyone, Fabien? Like if you're, do you feel like if you're flying XC, that's just part of the fundamentals that you absolutely need, or is SIV not for everybody?
SIV, it's not the only way of learning, for sure. It's a part. I can't estimate the percentage, but maybe I can estimate we can imagine for learning paragliding, there is a part of technique, a part of mental, and a part of analysis. We spend a lot of time. The technique you can acquire the technique very quickly. You can acquire the technique very quickly just to control your glider. But if it's done on the right way of balance, the mantle will do up and down very quick, up and down, and you will not understand why, and you will not recover as well. If the technique is well, you understand what's going on, and then you can recover much more clearly during the flight, or after the flight, or after a little trouble. And that's why the technique of the mantle could be 50% of the progression. The other 50 is the flying and analysis. But if you have a great analysis, if you have understand all the flow of the aerology to anticipate all the thermals, to see all the different reference, you can get airbirds and all stuff like this. But if your technique is completely crap, the mantle during the flight will be down again. It will be hard for you to recover from a low part, or from a lee side, because in cross country you can be in the lee side. And for you that takes a lot of energy to recover. You can coming out, but that will take a lot of energy, because the misunderstanding of the situation that makes people trouble. That's why for me, SIV courses again is not the only way to learn. It's a part of you must go in some situation sometime just to learn something. It's like a gymnasium, for me. It's like a technical gymnasium. It's like a bouldering place for climbing. You can reproduce different technique. You cannot doing on the hard long run, in the rock. That's why for me it's a gymnasium. You just go here just for training specific things. If you think for you want to learn your glider, that's good. But you want to learn on your glider, but also you want to learn on yourself. It's all the time like this. Even for very, very good pilot, you spend a lot of time without flying. You have a glider, the spring is starting, and we have to, we call, when we open a bottle, we put the I don't know how does it, open the bottle, it make like a, something like this. And we call it the psychologically unlock. We have to do a first SIV, a first movement to unlock your psychology lock during the winter, or during a cascade you had the previous, just to think, wow, I'm able to control again. All right, my technique is there. Okay, I will increase my mantle and I can go forward. But without that, the people get trouble in their head. They talk a lot. We talk in a bar. People talk a lot on bars. And what they talk about? Collapse. They talk about the main conversation. Talk about that kind of trouble we can have, but they never talk about, wow, that was nice to fly there. Wow, the feeling, my glider was just riding quite well. I see the birds and help me or something. No, No, that's why the mentally people just talking a lot about that. And that's crazy because when we are in SIV courses, especially when we are here, we all think is positive. Whatever the experience of each, we can learn to each other because if the people are got very big experience can talk about different things. People with low experience can talk about different things, but we all the time very, very positive about everything because when it's positive, you have a gain of experience from the others. And if we talk and that's why people like it because we're not talking about drama here. We're just talking about just paragliding, and they will really understand. They will going to talk to work on them, but not on the glider. And that's why now, just talking about how many SIV we need, and I think I told you it's important for each pilot to have done one SIV, just to know what's going on, just what we talk about. But how many we need now, it's completely a personal vision because it's for people they need a lot just to have a gain of confidence because on this ambience on this the process we use on SIV coursing that helps a lot. But some people like me, I used to, or some other people, when they had a do SIV coursing, they take a lot of information. They can do it by themselves because we give them some exercises to do it after the course. And if the people are able just to do it in those technique or those exercises, it's simple for them just to work by themselves. But a lot of people, they never used to do that. That's why they have to come back until they will understand they're good enough mentally and technically just to do it by themselves. That's why there is no rules after the first one.
Fabien, I totally agree with your viewpoint on being positive and optimistic in the drama. How many comps have I been to and you're driving up to launch and people are talking about this reserve toss and this accident. And so I don't want to get too dramatic because I think that's terrible headspace for pilots to be in. But the reality is that, you live in a place in Annecy where I'm sure over the years you've seen tons and tons of accidents. Let's just talk about that briefly. What are the most common, say the top three reasons that accidents happen and how could they be avoided?
The first we can see is rotation. They start in rotation and they conserve the rotation to the ground. And the other things are.
Do you mean like a
most
spin?
Most of the time it's spinning.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Yep.
No. Spin, rotation. Yeah, 360. I think they go into the glider. Most of the glider actually are very safe, but sometimes they deflate it, and the deflation push glider. When they're opening, they push on a roll. The people are a little bit scared to open the deflating part, but the deflating part is diving. That's why they try just to put the hands and then they start to be in a rotation, if they're close to the ground, they touch the ground or they touch trees or hear the trees. So some of us are the thing of pilots, we are some good thermals over here, and sometimes we have some clouds everywhere above the landing or the different area, and they try just to do some 360. They cannot, they're still climbing and they try to push that thing to come down. They lose the control by the centrifuge. They're scared of the centrifuge and they're coming out on the rapid exit. They cannot control the pitch. And they're not because they don't know how to control the pitch, just because they completely lost themselves about the centrifuge. They cannot estimate that even an A glider can turn as quick as that because they never do that. First things. And the third thing, the first thing is rotation, and the second thing is spins. We have a lot of problem of pilot who are just they're scared just to put the hand down, just for turning the glider, but they want just to get the thermals late in the day or the last thermal just to stay more longer in the air. They spin the glider because they just feel feel the instability into the harness and they try to recover in the hands, they are already in low speed and they just make the spin. But some of them don't know what is the difference between the 360 rotation and the spin. That's why they think they start the rotation and they start the spin. And the problem with the spin is weird sensation. If you put your hands up, like everybody say, if you're high enough, you have changed to recover. And they think they realized a good thing. But if you're not high enough, you touch the tree. The most accident we had, because I've got a French statistic, that's two parts: rotation or close to the ground or in the air, and spin. That's why in SIV courses we are really based on those two, because those two, the first thing, the rotations, you work on the technique. You must work on the technique just to squeeze your handle, and it's just adaptable 360. We call it regulate. You can regulate and play with the handles. People don't think you can regulate, and also because it's a mental thing. They're scared. They have a lot of history of trouble, about a lot of accident, and they say, and for them it's a huge thing, And spin also, it goes a bit further, because spin is a little bit tricky, as you know, because different glider can stall, different glider can be on spin. And for us, when you fly in different condition, you can have spin, but if you recognize, there is no trouble anyway. But the people or the thing, spin is dangerous, and they think they will avoid it without just to push the hands down. But that's wrong, because in different situation, on dynamic situation, you can span your glider as quick as possible without you push your hands so much down. And we have to explain them. We have to really explain them, that those two situations. That's why we are based on that both. And the other accident, unfortunately, are completely different. That's why we have to, on our school, we push on that. It's the landing. A lot of people don't know how to approach a landing field. And that's why it's a connection for Bivvy flying or single skin courses like we do. We are very focused on how to land in a field, because people think that after 20 flight they feel natural to land, but landing is not natural. You need a procedure. You need a procedure. You need an analyze of the position. You have to analyze a lot of things. Every time, and you know more than other people, because you have huge experience of Bivvy flying or cross country flying. If you are in the official landing, everybody landing on one side, it doesn't mean it's a good side, especially also in where we are.
Yeah.
When we push pilots just to land on different side, different area very often, because that push themselves to have a self-analysis and not to follow a group and not to follow some board who's just right like something like this. And that's why a lot of people just got they just follow like cheap and the landing, and they say at the last part, oh my God, I'm on the wrong side, and they just start to initiate a turn and they crash themselves. That's the main problem actually in France. That's also our topics to push in our school actually.
That's really interesting. So, hearing it from you makes perfect sense, but statistically that surprises me that of course, I knew that be not controlling a proper turn or spiral and then a spin and then landing contributes to a lot of accidents. But I would have thought statistically, like, flying in conditions that are above your skill level or, blowing a crosswind launch or something would lead to more accidents. But that's really interesting that it's more these kind of basic fundamentals that are being screwed up. That's interesting to know that.
Yeah. That's why, because we thought with the new evolution, a lot of people are flying Zeno, a lot of people are flying high performance gliders, but uh, most of the accidents are coming. I think the high percentage are coming with that three things, and not because they have a huge collapse to recover a crevasse for 1,000 meters. It's just because it was not on the lee side, and he made a trouble. All most of the stories are like this actually, and we think we changed our mind last few years because we used to do like the SIV courses, like doing maneuver for doing maneuvers, and we changed a little bit last few years about just be more clear with to explain people what are the fundamentals to help you in some situations, and also to push them just to assume some some to assume the centrifuge force. Even if you are A gliders, even if you have a B glider, people think, oh yeah, I'm flying C for many years, but now I need a B because I feel less confident or something. But the aerodynamic behaviors are exactly the same, and whatever, if you want A gliders or a CCC gliders, if your skills and technical and your mental are completely crap, it will be the same results.
You're going to crash on the A too. I like that.
No, but to be honest, a lot of people say, "Yeah, you flying." I have million people coming with Zeno, a million people are coming with C, and for sure they haven't got the proper skills to control the gliders. But I don't care, because for them, it's important to talk to them about themselves and not about the glider. The glider has got two handles and a seat. We just have to know how to use it. But if it's whatever it is, red and blue, I don't care. We have to work on the self-estimation of the pilots more than on the glider. And for me, we're going to have a huge, it's like on the car, there is still have many accidents on the car, and but we have to educate more the pilots than we put some different radar on more cops. No, we have to educate more the pilot. That's why we try to push in our philosophy.
Great. Fabien, let's switch gears here a little bit, because I don't know of anybody else doing this. I'm sure there are folks, but you're teaching single skin gliders now. I fly them a bit, but I'd like to get your take on it. What's different about that education? What goes into that kind of those fundamentals versus a standard wing?
Yeah. Why? My story, I'm alpinist and a rock climber, and I like to spend time in the mountain. But I'm getting old, and I don't want to come down by my foot because my knees hurt. Well, not really, but I want to save my body. And I love paragliding. And by the pass, our mountains glider was too heavy or take too much place on our backs. That's why we give up most of the time to take them. Except for very basic courses in the mountains. When I started to work on the development with a design 4 or 5 years ago, I was so happy to see this single skin, and say, wow, that will be a huge evolution for us for running in the mountain without a big bag. And that's why my only way was just that: less weight, but also less a compact bag. I can take every time. And then the first I had was the XX Lite for sure from Ozone, and I flown 1 or 2 years like this, and it was just fantastic. But the performance was not good, and the skills was a little bit tricky for all of the people. And when Ed Design proposed me just to test gliders and to work on that, I was very happy. But the only way for me was just to have a simple a bit more performant, but a simple with a lot of brake range and as compact. And whatever it will be not as light as the other, but I would like a compromise just to be easy in the mountain. Well, the UFO came out and the skiing came out. That was huge progress compared to the XX Lite. Well, after, because we push on the topics with the UFO, because I know more the air design, I really want to have really simple gliders, the simplest, because mountain conditions are difficult. And if we have a little more difficult glider, that takes a lot of skills. I knew most of alpinists will just want to do it again, trailers and something like this, and they will be attracted to that kind of new sport or a new feeling movement in mountains. Um, our goal was just to make the easiest, the simplest, and the light as possible. And the UFO was great, and I was very, very, very happy. And my goal was my girlfriend, she's doing a lot of alpinism, and she's a rock climber also, but she was so scared under the XX Lite. And when we did the prototype, developed the UFO, she was so happy to fly with. And now I could find in my home, because she's all the time flying with. And that was the history. That's why, well, when my girlfriend started to fly with this glider, I would say, wow, it's possible, really possible, just to teach people with. I do a lot of tests during 3 years with beginners, in normal normal gliders. I just provide this glider on basically on the training hills, and people was very surprised as it was easy to launch. It was easy to carry up from the training hills. It was easy just to get a control of it, and their feeling was, wow, I want to fly now. And look at my friend; they need more time to control, and with this glider, it was very easy. But for sure, we hesitate to leave them to beginners, because it was not on the way of teaching paragliding. But I do a lot of tests during a few years. I had a story about one guy. He came with his son. He's got 50 years old, and it was not really a sport people and not very coordinate. And his son was really good. And well, I decided just to give them a UFO and just to say, yeah, let's try, let's have fun, because he had a lot of failures on the training hills. And at the moment he took this glider, his smile come back, and it was just perfect. It was just perfect. All the stuff was perfect. It was really successful for him, for his mantle, and for wow, he was so happy. He can play. For me, it was just a test, but he was happy to play with the others and to have a really successful, rather than his age, And we continue like this the whole week long. And for him, it was natural, But for us, we were in front of something, because we know there is a different specific thing on a single skin you cannot find on the normal gliders. That's why we had to explain afterwards what are the difference. And he said, well, I don't care. I'm going to buy a single skin. I just want to fly down the mountain. And it was just nice. And then we decided just to make some single ski course specifically, because we knew it was safe. We knew it was easy, but also we can work more on different other topics than a normal course. We try just to develop more those kind of course for a few reasons. Because we are I have a lot of friends, mountain guides and climbers. And trailers are very attracted to just to play in the mountains. Like people do some speed flying, people do some wingsuit and all stuff, and it's for them it's a new fashion, new things to do it. and also for most of the climbers and most of the mountain guides, something like this. It's a new creation, help them just to come down the mountains and to save themselves on for the knees or something like this. And that's why we attract a lot of friends. We do a lot of benchmark camps with friend climbers or high mountain guides, and it was a real success.
Are the courses really with the single skin gliders really meant for kind of the basics, basically launching and having a sledder, nice flight down and landing? You're not really teaching them to use them in more dynamic ways. You're teaching them to use it as a descent tool.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, basically, we just do that. That means the difference. I'm going to talk about the differences. The easy launch, you know that it's just perfect. You can feel the lift very quickly. You can have a really short space to launch, but you have to run as a normal glider. But it's the potential to miss a launch is really rare. That's the first thing, that to extract yourself from the mountain. It's very easy. And to reach the landing, this glider with less aspect ratio, less inertia, because there is one single skin. There is no air pressure in it, no air imprisoned in it. That's why there is less inertia everywhere. That most of a single skin are traversing turbulence much more easily than a normal glider. And that's why that allowed people just to traverse a little bit of turbulence, easily thermal or little rough conditions. And the different thing is for the approach is the same approach as a paraglider. The aspect, the ratio, the glide ratio, is a bit different, because for a pilot like you, a paraglider has got some references. And for sure, when he's flying single skin, you say, wow, what the hell? But for pilots who just begin on that, if you start learning driving with a Ferrari, you learn on the Ferrari and you don't know anything else. You just adapt yourself and learn how to control it. When we just teach people completely new on this sport, they have no experience on other thing, and everything goes right without thinking differently. That's why they just take it and just adapt themselves. If the launch is like this, the glide ratio is this, we just, for the landing, it's pretty easy too, because they have no other experience. The difference is when you are a paraglider and you want to become a single skin pilot. Because the paraglider think, I've got an amazing glide ratio. This glider go down. Oh, that's shit. And when I'm turning, it goes very quick on the side. I'm so scared. Blah 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 blah. Different things, which is not really important. If you are on the landing, there is no flare out, or I crash every time. It's completely shit. All right. I listen to a lot of things like this. I don't care. But I have the proof during all my camp I've done with beginners. No one has landed on the back. No one has got a trouble in the air. No one has been in a divertation without any control. No one has got collapse and all the stuff like this. I just push and put everything on the truth. You say, well, it's just a question of adaptation. It's just a question of adapt yourself, and you will see the life will be better. Why a lot of people crashing in the landing? We talk about in the air, it feels sensitive. Well, for sure, it feels sensitive because the size are smaller, and the light equipment you can compare for your XAB glider to I don't know if you've flown. I'm sure you've flown on the Peak 4 or something like this, because you fly Nivut. Is that true?
Yeah, correct.
the difference inertia between those gliders is huge. It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
A light equipment is a little bit more, a radical feeling, very quick, but it's not going.
Mm-hmm.
It feels sensitive, very quick, but then it happens. In a Peak 4 or like you flown or in a race glider with the very hard materials, it feels more heavy above the head.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the movement is going, it feels big inertia every time. It's completely different feeling. And well, the feeling we have on a single skin is even more impressive because you have no air in prison. That's why you have no inertia, and it's really light. Even action, it feels tuk moving on the side, moving forward, but it makes people scared.
Yeah, my first few flights on a single skin, I felt naked. I just felt like I was like there was nothing up there, and it felt really bizarre. But like you said, once you adapt, then they're just terrific tools.
And what a thing! What in for pilots, that's why we push on the on our courses, on beginner courses, for like a normal, for them it's a tool. We never talk about them, about that kind of different tiny details like a paraglider thing. We never talk. It's just a tool, fly, man. And they don't see the difference. For them it's natural. And the landing, it's natural completely. And we have maybe one fail on the back in one field because that's normal. We have to, but 90%, I can assume 90% they land on the foot every time. That's why we make a difference. That's why we do a lot of tests with students. We define a different a bit pedagogy about that, because it's an easy tool. It's really easy to walk with and to climb in the mountains and to land properly and to fly properly. Now we were more focused on that kind of camps, are how to approach a landing, but not an official landing, because by the performance we know is not as good as another one. We know now most of the area, like we are flying in Annecy, the landing field is quite far away, need a lot of glide ratio. But if you have the wind against you, even a normal glider cannot reach the landing, but even more single skin. That's why our approach are, okay, it's easy to launch. We know how to launch. It's easy in the air, no trouble. But we are very focused on how they understand the space in the air, how they analyze the situation to approach, which side of way to approach, what kind of approach do you choose, the different adaptations. Because they're not scared. It's easy to launch, and we push them all the focus on to create themselves, to understand, and just to be intelligent landing and not a cheap landing. And we were very focused on that because for two reasons. Because about the accident I told you before, and also because that kind of pilot will be not flying in the official site most of the time. They will have a little hike and fly and decide just to land in one land close to in one field close to the car, or maybe because they cannot reach the landing and they have to adapt themselves and adapt the technique to reach an official landing. And we'll focus on that. It's easy with this kind of camps because there is no problem for them on the takeoff. That's what the only thing they have to think is just to build the approach, to build the approach and to land properly like this. Because we push them and we try to interest them to say, okay, well, that's a big landing, but maybe we'll find a small landing. And a small landing, you must be much more precise on that. And they're very concentrated on that, and they're very interesting to see the different situations and to adapt this different situation and this technique on different area also. That's why even for a beginner course and single skin, we try nearly each day to change the landing in nearly each flight.
Fabien, are there, like we kind of learned in the early days of the mini wings and speed wings that people started using them, and well, they still do, but hopefully this is, being done less and less as information travels and accidents add up. And in the mini wings and speed wings, pilots were often using them in the middle of the day and getting in real trouble with thermals. And, these are typically pilots who haven't done any SIV, and then they're flying wings that really aren't built for thermaling. They're not cross-country gliders. They're not paragliders in a sense that we think of as, a normal-sized paraglider. Are there things that like that with the single surface wings? I've heard of people flying them pretty sizable distances cross-country. In my flying with a single surface glider, I have never considered that. It doesn't feel right over my head. Are there things that shouldn't be done with single surface gliders?
It's very weird. For me, it's a paraglider, but it's more a tool than a paraglider.
Yeah.
Because I have so much experience in other glider to say, well, I use my cross country glider just to make some cross country. I use my bivouac gliders because I want to hike and have a nice cross behind and walk a little bit. I'm so spoiled about that.
Yeah.
But and I love every day, because I work on the building every day and I love to do each day a run. I use my single skin just to make a run. If I'm on top of the mountain, it's possible to fly at that time. I will fly, instead of to running down. But for the moment, just to make, I don't know how they explain, to make shout people to stop shouting about single skin. I made a nice cross country around the lake with my 14 square meters. I did the Tour du Lac, the big Tour du Lac, 42 square meters. For sure, I need a book to read during all this cross country, but I made it, and it was just perfect. And it was just nice. It was because it's flying. It's pretty safe. It's easy handling. On the thermal, it's fantastic. Just between two thermals, you need to have the thermal should be very close.
Yeah.
But except that, if you have a ridge, you can follow the ridge. You can do a lot of soaring. But if you cannot compare to a Peak 4 or a Zeno or an Enso, if you not compare, if you're just in the air, happy to be in the air, you just play with your tool. It's that your hammer. It's good to be used for open also a bottle of beer. You use this tool for that. But it's not the proper action for a hammer.
But it worked.
Yeah,
that's great.
Actually, it's very hard for me just to. I could not say. I'm not in the right position to say, well, this glider is for using for that, this glider is using for that, this glider is for using for that. Just have fun in the air and use your glider as possible, as potential as you can. That's why, for me, if I had one glider, maybe at that time I will have my light Bivvy glider, because it's enough performance to do cross country. It's very light to climb in and to hike and to have a lot of fun for different acros, different things, but it's not as good just to do some technical climbing, but it's good to climb up to the Mont Blanc and fly from, But I have to choose just to have really light one and my bivouac, because the really light one, I can climb hard routes and come down with this route, and I can. I'm not scared just to give up from a flight, because it's really light under my back, and I can come down by foot. And for me, it's a fabulous tool, and we have to use as a tool and not as a lot of people said. You're not able just to do some thermal with that, or you're not able to do some soaring. I just do some down. Of course not. It's a tool. It's a flying tool. You have that. Don't regret you have that. A lot of people regret it. Oh yes, today, it's amazing. I miss my Zeno. I haven't got my Zeno. I don't care. Just fly what you have and have fun in the day. Explore.
Perfect. Perfect.
The potential is on you, not on the glider, not on the glider. And just the last information: this winter was not flyable. It is just an example. It was not really flyable in our country. And last Saturday, it was a fantastic sprint day, and I had just my bivouac glider. I have a wild. And I just walk on a mountain and I see it was fantastic. And I did 250K, in the day. But the morning, I was so happy to do it. But the morning, I would start in the air with a lot of Enso 3. And the two first transition, it was going fast. I can't go fast at them. I can't have the same performance. But in the end of the day, they done 210 and I done 250. What the hell? It was funny. Of course, they choose different routes, but they have a lot of fun. I have nice cross country, and the day was just nice for all of us. And for sure, when we're flying and you have the same skills and we're flying against all that kind of glider, you can compare, say, oh shit, you can blame yourself, but don't stop blaming yourself. You just take it easy in the air and just fly, give the maximum potential of yourself, and the glider will give it to you for sure.
That's just a terrific story and great advice, because I think that's a very common fallacy and frustration for pilots, when they take off on glide. I had a very similar, when we met and I came and showed that video at your place. This was, gosh, it was during Coupe Car years, at least 4 or 5 years ago. It was way before the first X-Alp. So, I think I was flying the Arctic then, the Niviuk Arctic, and I took off from one of the Grenolier. It was one of the beautiful sites south of St. Hilaire, and we were going to try to fly back to Annecy north. So it was, it wasn't a long flight, maybe 100K or something. And on the first transition over Grenoble, I think maybe, the guys I was with, this was back in the Ice Peak 6 and Enzo maybe 1 or 2 days. I just completely lost them on glide, and we came into the ridge above St. Hilaire, and they were so much higher and farther ahead. And but at the end of the day, my friend and I, Bruce Marks, we were both on Arctics. We both went quite a bit farther, and it took us a lot longer to get there, but in a lot of ways, I think we had a more interesting day. It wasn't racing. It was just enjoying the France. It was just an amazing flight and such an incredible experience. And I think that's I think we get lost in the numbers and the competition and we and that's the end game. The end game there is it sucks because you end, you're done. You can't just keep pushing that and then there's nowhere to go with the sport. Eventually you've gone as far as you can go, and you've done the comps, and then what? So if you don't enjoy all the different aspects, the single skin and the acro and all the things that our sport has to offer, then it gets boring. It's not fun anymore.
I agree. I completely agree. I think all the pilots actually forgot what is the essential. Just to be in the air is just fantastic, and then it's plus.
Yeah.
And it's and everybody compare, everyone to compare, competition for everything. What I'm very frustrated every time about 2 questions from my guests are. First question is, Fab, I want to change my glider. Do you think this glider is safe? What the hell? How can I make an answer about that? I did many times. If they built people, engineers, test pilot, very good skills, make gliders, and they sell in the market, you think it's because they're good, or do you think because they're crap? I say, oh shit, yeah, of course they're probably good. Oh yeah, you got the response. Yeah, you got the answer. That's the first question. I say, oh, it's completely stupid. And the second answer is, well, Fab, I test this glider and I compare to my other gliders, and my friend was beside to me, and it was shit performance, and they say it's good performance. I say, what kind of do you have the same load range? What the flying side was completely same atmosphere and all stuff. Oh no, of course not. I was not, and all the time. It is nothing to compare. It's not good, It's and you have a lot of people who's got bad behaviors, and for them to explain them, to test a glider is not that, and it's not your job. It's already tested before.
Yeah.
And that's why you're not going to answer to be better. It may be to ask the question what kind of air mass you were, or maybe you will not push the same as that, as him, and different other questions. But they want to explore the thing. The gliders make the difference all the time, and the philosophy is just to be in the air and to play with the air mass.
Yeah,
and if you play with the air mass, for sure you're going to have the potential to do everything.
That's one of my greatest frustrations, Fab. Is that exact thing that you do. You have these pilots that they change their gear 3 times a year, and they're never satisfied. It's like, well, that guy's definitely, he's faster than I am. He's gliding better. And, I get asked all the time from people like, hey, can you introduce me to Niviuk? I think I could be sponsored. And I really don't like doing it because there's no loyalty. That person will fly the Peak 4 and love it and just think it's the best wing in the world, and then someone will get a little better glide on one of the glides on the Xeno, and then they switch. They sell their Peak 4 and they go to the Xeno, and I say, wait a minute, you're missing the point. We're just having fun. It's supposed to. If it's not fun, there's no point in doing this. But it's So, well, listen,
I agree, but it's every time like this.
It is. That's the nature of people. Hey, Fabien, before I let you go, I really want to talk to you about Bivvy, because I was watching your video, your great video on Patreon, the Flyeo educational videos you guys are going to be putting out, and I know that you teach Bivvy. You're also very passionate about Bivvy flying. We get a lot of requests from listeners of the show about how to get into Bivvy flying and what kind of gear should I use, and how do I approach it safely. Do you guys do courses in Bivvy flying, or how do you approach that side of the sport?
All right, well, it's on the project for next autumn. We're going to have the first courses for Bivvy. Well, it will be benchmark. Well, our idea, it's because for me, my heroes are you guys when you're doing some XR, because it's fantastic, because you're flying a huge distance, you're flying in all conditions, you're not looking at the forecast, you just walking in the condition of a day, on the takeoff of the day, and you find all the time a solution adaptation, and you have to give up a lot of time, and you have to enjoy the flights every time you fly it, and it's just the philosophy is just brilliant, because you are most of the time alone, and you have some time with another people, but you have to think. And there is nothing to help you, nothing to talk, no instructor to take off, no flags on the landings just to tell you what to do. And for me, it's the best things. And that's why we try during the single skin course to have the same mentality. We would like to push the same mentality on bivouac flying. That's our goal. It's just a bivouac like a single skin, or just example to push people to understand what is the fundamental things. It's not performance. It's not to have the best glider, the lightest glider. It's just to enjoy and to think differently. Ball bivouac is just a mentality, and it's just enjoy the moment. Don't talk about performance, because we talk a lot of XALP. It's crazy for good skills pilot like me, because wow, I can see a kind of engagement in preparation you did to do that. But the people look like a fucking amazing performance without preparation. You prepare a lot to do that. You do a lot of things to do that. And the things are not for them. That's the first things. Every time when people think bivouac, they think, oh, I want to make cross country just behind. And that's why I need a light and performance glider to do that. Now, that kind of people, we try to text them, to tell them, if you are a middle of nowhere, out of your official site, you will think completely differently. Because you don't know where you're going to land, you don't estimate the glide ratio, you just have to think differently. And maybe the best performance glider, even and the best cross-country glider, the lightest, will not change about your attitude to land properly, to analyze the situation. That's why we will not be extremists on the first bivouac. We are here to educate them to enjoy the mountain and to have the right safety attitude in front of the mountain area.
I think there's what the beauty of bivvy flying to me is there's so many different levels, isn't there? I mean, in Europe, you can drive up to the top and launch and fly down to the valley bottom and have a nice sandwich and a coffee and maybe hike a little bit or take the gondola up and spend the night on the top of the mountain and fly down the next day and you've done a bivvy. You can also cross the Alaska range like I did and take 37 days. But there's many different levels. And when you were just talking, it made me think of an analogy I used to say a lot in my sailing days and the kite surfing expedition that's still going. But we used to have this saying that a sailboat is safe in harbor, but that's not what boats are built for. They're built to go out and explore the world. But most people never do. Most people stay in the harbor. And I think I think the analogy fits there with bivvy flying because it's, you improve so rapidly because you're suddenly you're assessing everything on your own. You're flying a launch maybe that you don't know anything about, or it maybe has never even been used. Or same with LZs, you don't have weather information. You're just having to assess and be a pilot, and use the skills that you have to do something that's just it's what our wings are built for, is to travel. And I think I've been trying to be very encouraging to pilots, even low hour pilots, because like I said, it doesn't have to be the X Alps. It doesn't have to be Alaska. You can do it there in Annecy is a perfect place to fly, to have a great weekend bivvy and end up at the lake and have a coffee.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's true. We are more instructor than adventure people like you. That's why we just want to teach what is possible to teach. Basically, I mean, the first thing is we're going to talk with them about how to organize the pack, how to organize 1 or 2 days autonomous, like food, water, and all stuff like this, to push them to read the path on maps, just very basic stuff, and they will be enough impressed and not enough organized just to follow our advices about that. And whatever the level, we need a minimum level. That means they should be quite autonomous on the flying side to take off and land in easy area, because around Annecy, like it's pretty smooth takeoff. We have big valleys. There is no risk, nothing. That's why it helps for us just to introduce bivvy flying for that. And the other thing is we would like to push them to go in the top of the mountains and to teach them just the essential things for camping, bivouac flying close to the safe area, to do not disturb them too much, but you have an idea of what's happening when there is when it's a little bit raining, when you have a little bit of moisture in the morning, when you have wind, just that kind of things. How do you repack in a day? How do you dry stuff? Just easy things.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. And so you kind of reinforce the skills that they have and push them a little bit, not too much, but you push them a little bit to gain more skills. And I think that what it sounds like is you're really pushing people to be more independent pilots, which is how you learn.
Yeah, the thing is, for them, when they fly on a federation site, they know where they start and they know approximately when they land. When they start to do cross country, they use the thumb to reach the base. But actually, the adventure seems very different on the Bivvy because we will push ahead because it's not known by themselves. They'll be scared. That will be interesting, very interesting for them to be coaches by instructors, just to anticipate a bit more days after days like this.
Mm. Great, Fabien. Hey, last question, because I've already taken up so much of your time, and it's taken us a few weeks to to be able to hammer this out with our poor connection and stuff. But I've got a good one now. So I was just reviewing before we got back on the line an email I got from Ed Ewing, where one of the readers of the magazine asked him that he'd heard about on the Mayhem about stalls and how we've had a few acro pilots on the show that there seems to be this magic number of 300 stalls, which is a lot more stalls than most people ever get, unless you're an acro pilot or a pretty dedicated cross country pilot and do a lot of SIV. But that does seem to be kind of the number. And obviously in your first SIV, you might get to the point where the last day you get a few stalls, but what do you encourage your SIV students and your more serious cross country pilots to get? Because I recently did a survey at a comp I was in down in Mexico where I was giving a talk, kind of a safety talk, and showing some of the videos that Seiko and Charles have been putting out there in Annecy about SIV and doing acro stalls on high end gliders on two liners. And I surveyed the room, and there were a lot of good pilots there, and none of them had done 300. Well, other than me, because I take it pretty seriously. But what do you recommend, and what do you find that the thinking there from some of the acro guys was that until you get that many, there's a nervousness that goes along with it, and once you kind of cross over into 300, it's like doing a lawn. It doesn't make you nervous. You recognize the moves. It's not hard. It's not scary. It's like breathing.
Yeah, well, there is two different parts. I think for one for cross country, one for acro pilots. Cross country to make stalls basically, and you can do a lot age of hours without you do a nice full stall because you can recover your glider without you do full stall. The full stall for cross country is really mental things. It's to push your mantle ahead to say, wow, I'm able in some situation just to put my gliders down and to recover. But honestly, it is not really useful for a cross country pilot. But we know the percentage of technique and the analysis knowledge for flying are much more important than a full stall. But the third part, which is the mantle, and is important too. That's the 3 point we just have to look for to progress. The full stall helps on techniques for sure, but it helps also on mantle to say to the pilot, "Well, it's rough today. If I have a cravat, I'm able maybe to do that." But to be clear with the cross country pilot, if you just do an SIV course across 10 full stall, if you have changed to do 10 full stall, it's not enough to recognize the situation on the real moment. That's why it's great for the mantle, for part of your mantle, but it's not really useful on the reality. other exercises are much more useful to know the spin point on the turn, to recognize that those kind of things, to just to do collapses and rotation, just to have no fear on back pitch, to have no fear on rapid exit on your harness, because on the rough conditions you can have the fan will push you out on the back pitch, and you have to control your pitch correctly when you want to, because it's a part of mental, but you have to use it every time in rough conditions. But the full stall for me is not essential at all for 90% of the pilots. What Seiko and Charles try to push on a high level standard pilot. For me, high level standard pilot means it's like World Cup competition or competitors or ex-Alp competitors. They should do everything. They should know everything if they want to be in security in where they fly. Why? Because you fly with a lot of on the gaggle. There's a lot of people. You sometimes not choosing your aerology. You can make a mistake like everyone. You can be in trouble, and just to be safe and land safely as you can, you must master the glider and the different position and shape of your glider. You must know that. And for a race glider, a lot of people, the security with the Zeno is pushing ahead the pilot to fly with this kind of glider, but they hide completely the behavior when something goes wrong. And that's why when you're flying in this part of which is maybe 10% of the people in the world flying on the D glider or CCC glider, we must push them to really, really be careful and to be trained, not only in the technical, not only in the analysis, but also in the mental and technical push ahead, like SIV quite regularly, just to be sure and realize properly when it goes.
Great. I'm glad you differentiated that out. That's super valuable.
Yeah, and just now for the acro pilots, which is a little bit different, because acro pilot it's different. It's a different spirit. For me, it's gymnastic. It's you are in a training box every time. You're not flying on the over the rocky mount or very rocky area. You'll just have most of the time a safety box for training, enough height. That's why you preserve your security mainly. Then you're gonna do some maneuvers. And the full stall for us, it's one of the base maneuvers, because you're supposed to have, even on wing overs, have a little cravat. And if you want to continue the run or continue training, you must be able to open this cravat. On the short gliders with not a lot of wingspan, it's very easy to make an easy full stall, and a second after, you can sort it out very easily. That's why for the package for acro pilots, there is two kind of things. First is dynamic, like for sure, wing overs and movement like rotation, for sure, speed rotation, rapid exit. And on the second hand, they must master it very quickly on full stall, basic full stall. And after we have different type of full stall just to play with. And for acro pilot, both should be very clear. It should be really natural, at least for much more than a cross-country pilot. The wing over should be as natural as the full stall for acro pilot.
Yeah, totally agreed. Fabien, thank you so much. I really do appreciate this. I know you're slammed over there with many SIVs, so I'll let you get back to your work. This has just been incredibly valuable. Lots of learning, lots of advice, lots of great advice, and we'll have the links up for your Patreon page and your school and anything else. And so I can't wait till we get in the air again someday. Thanks, Fabien. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really love it to see you again in the air. Why not?
Fantastic. Cheers, buddy.
My girl,
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Really cool talk with Fabien. I owe him a lot. He's been real integral in my own flying and been following him for a long time, and in a place that's just world famous for flying. It doesn't get much better than Annecy. So I encourage all of you to go over there and do some lessons with him, do some SIV with him on the gorgeous Lake Annecy and the Teeth, the Les Dents, and that whole zone. Is just really, truly amazing. If you're getting something out of this show, all we ask for and all we have ever asked for is $1 a show. This is a listener-supported podcast, and as you can imagine, it takes us quite a bit of time and energy to put all these together, and we hope you're enjoying it. So think about it like a magazine subscription or a newspaper subscription or something you value. There are several ways to support us. On the website, cloudbasemayhem.com, you'll see the links for just a one-time donation through PayPal. Or you can support us on patreon.com/cloudbasemayhem, where you can be rewarded for doing so. You kind of set it and forget it, and you only pay when content comes out. And then we also now have a store, so we're selling these wicked cool Patagonia or all organic t-shirts with the Cloud-Based Mayhem on the back. They're super nice, really soft, fit really well. We have those men's and women's, and we've got these new trucker hats by Annika Herden called Recaps. They're all made from recycled materials, and they're wicked cool. Every single one is totally individual and unique. Great color schemes. I think you're going to dig them. So you'll find all that also on the website. So if you want some swag and want to wear the brand, I would be stoked. That'd be fantastic. I appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.